There are moments in life that change everything in an instant. 1 second. You're moving through your day as usual. Nothing seems out of place. And then, without warning, your entire reality shatters. For Lisa, that moment came in the middle of a grocery store. She wasn't searching for the truth. She was just picking up apples. But as she turned into the produce aisle, she saw something that made her heart stop. There he was, Mark, her husband, the man she had spent 10 years building a life with. But he wasn't alone. Standing beside him was a woman Lisa had never seen before. And at his side, clutching his sleeve with small, eager hands, was a little girl calling him Daddy. Before we get into this unbelievable story of secrets, betrayal, and the search for truth, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss a story that proves reality is sometimes stranger than fiction. Now, let's dive in. Lisa always considered herself a woman with good instincts. She noticed things. The way Mark's laughter had changed, how his phone always seemed to be turned face down, the late nights that had started as an occasional inconvenience but had become routine. She had asked questions. He had given answers. Work's been crazy. You know how meetings are. I just needed some air. The kind of explanations that sounded reasonable enough in the moment, but left behind an uneasy feeling she couldn't shake. She had convinced herself it was stress. Every marriage had rough patches. Every couple had moments where the rhythm fell off. It wasn't until she stood frozen in that grocery store, gripping the handle of her shopping cart, that she realized she had been searching for a different kind of answer, one she wasn't ready for. Mark wasn't supposed to be there. He had said he was at work. Yet there he stood, holding a basket of apples, smiling in a way Lisa hadn't seen in years. It was a warmth that used to be reserved for her, for their moments, for their family. Then she saw the woman beside him. She wasn't just another shopper exchanging small talk. Her posture was too relaxed, her presence too familiar. Lisa watched as Mark turned toward her, his fingers brushing against hers in a way that felt practiced, comfortable. And then the little girl, small hands gripping the sleeve of his jacket, looking up at him with wide, trusting eyes. The way she called out to him, without hesitation, without doubt. Daddy. Lisa felt the weight of those 2 syllables land with force, knocking the breath from her chest. There was no misunderstanding this, no way to explain it away. This wasn't just a coworker, a friend, someone passing through his life. This was family, a family she had never known existed. Her grip tightened on the shopping cart as a wave of questions flooded her mind. Who was this woman? Who was the child? Asterisk, how long had this been going on? She had spent 10 years with Mark, trusting him, loving him, believing in the life they had built. She had never felt more like a stranger to it than in that moment. Every instinct told her to march forward, to demand answers, to make a scene if she had to. She wanted to hear the excuses, to watch him fumble for a way out, to see his face when he realized he had nowhere to hide. But something stopped her. A confrontation here, in the middle of a crowded store, would only bring more questions than answers. Mark would deny. He would deflect. He would find a way to twist the moment into something it wasn't. Lisa needed the truth, the whole truth. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she turned the cart away. She moved quickly, not caring where she was headed, only knowing that she had to leave. The air inside felt suffocating, the walls closing in. When she finally reached the parking lot, she gripped the door handle of her car, willing herself to steady her hands. She slid into the driver's seat and stared ahead, her mind refusing to process what her eyes had just seen. Mark had another life, another woman, another child. Lisa had spent years believing in the man she married. But now, she had to ask herself who had she really been sharing her life with all this time. Lisa had spent years trusting Mark. Now, every moment she replayed in her mind felt like a carefully crafted illusion. His late nights, the secretive phone calls, the sudden need to step outside for fresh air. All the things she had once dismissed now carried a weight she couldn't ignore. She needed answers, real ones. For days, she watched him carefully, The way he always kept his phone within reach. The way his demeanor shifted when she walked into the room. He wasn't just distracted. He was hiding something. Then came the moment she had been waiting for. It happened so casually. Mark had just stepped out, only planning to be gone a few minutes. His phone sat charging on the counter, the screen lighting up with a notification. Lisa's breath caught. She had never been the type to invade his privacy. She had never needed to. Until now. She reached for it, her fingers trembling as she tapped the screen. No password that a message thread sat at the top of his text, a name she had never seen before, Rachel. Her stomach twisted as she opened the conversation. The words stared back at her, each one sinking deeper than the last. I miss you. I can't wait to see you and Emma this weekend. Emma, the little girl from the grocery store. Lisa scrolled, her heart hammering in her chest. Photos, smiling faces, a picnic at the park, a birthday cake with candles. Mark, Rachel, and Emma posing like a perfect little family. Her hands shook as she tapped into his calendar. Their names appeared there too, woven between his supposed work meetings. Weekend trip with Rachel and Emma. Dinner at Rachel's. She kept going, opening his bank app. Transfers. Repeated. Regular. Money flowing into an account under Rachel's name. Payments for things she never knew existed. Rent. School fees. Vacations. She had expected lies. She had prepared herself for deception. But this wasn't just another woman. This wasn't a fleeting affair. This was a life, fully formed, fully established, running parallel to hers. Lisa set the phone down. The house around her felt different now, like a stranger's home. How long had this been happening? How many moments had she spent believing she was Mark's only world while he was building another? There was no denying it now. No way for him to talk his way out of it. Lisa knew what she had to do. The truth wasn't just slipping through the cracks anymore. It was wide open, staring her in the face. Lisa had seen enough. She had read the messages, scrolled through the photos, traced every transaction. She knew the truth. But now, she needed proof that would leave no room for doubt, no space for him to twist reality into something more convenient. So she waited. The next morning, she watched as Mark went through his usual routine. He kissed her goodbye, told her he had a long day ahead, promised he'd be home late. She smiled, nodded, played along, and the moment his car pulled out of the driveway, she grabbed her keys and followed. Mark was nothing if not predictable. He always took the same route to work, always grabbed coffee from the same cafe. Except today, something was different. He wasn't heading toward the office. Lisa kept her distance, heart pounding as she watched his car weave through traffic. He wasn't running errands. He wasn't on a work call. He had a destination point 15 minutes later. He pulled into the parking lot of a small diner on the other side of town. Lisa parked farther down the street, adjusting her rear-view mirror as she watched him step out of the car. He walked inside, his posture relaxed, unhurried, like he belonged there. Minutes passed. Then the front door swung open again. Rachel, holding little Emma's hand. Lisa gripped the steering wheel, her nails pressing into the leather as she watched Mark bend down, arms open, his voice carrying just enough for Lisa to hear. "There's my girl." Emma giggled, throwing herself into his arms. He lifted her with ease, kissed the top of her head, whispered something that made her smile. Lisa could barely breathe. This wasn't a guilty man sneaking around, stealing moments in secret. He wasn't cautious. He wasn't hesitant. He was comfortable. Because this wasn't an affair. This was a life. She sat in her car, watching through the diner window as they slid into a booth. Mark reached for Rachel's hand across the table, rubbing his thumb against her skin as they spoke. Emma played with a crayon, drawing on a napkin while Mark ruffled her hair. He was at ease, at peace, like a man who had everything he wanted. Lisa's hands clenched into fists. How long? How many birthdays, holidays, anniversaries had she spent waiting for him to come home while he was here, building memories with them, She needed more as they left the diner. Lisa started her car. Mark didn't return to work. He drove them home. Their home, a quiet neighborhood, a driveway he pulled into without a second thought. He helped Emma out of the car, kissed Rachel's cheek, walked up to the door like it was second nature. Lisa parked a few houses away, heart hammering as she watched him disappear inside. She had followed him for answers. Now, she had all of them. Lisa had spent days sitting with the truth, the weight of it pressed against her chest like a boulder, but she refused to let it crush her. She wasn't the kind of woman to let lies define her. And Mark was about to learn that. She didn't confront him right away. That would have been too easy for him. He would have had time to scramble, to weave another story, to make her question what she already knew. No, she needed control of this moment. So she gathered everything that the text messages, the photos, the financial records showing money leaving their joint account, funding not just one life but multiple, a second home, a second family, and another secret. Mark had tried to bury a third woman, another child, another life built behind her back. The betrayal ran deeper than she had ever imagined. That night she waited. Mark walked through the front door like nothing had changed, like he wasn't carrying the weight of his lies in his pocket, in the text he had sent just hours before. He kissed her cheek, set his briefcase down, smiled like a husband with nothing to hide. She let him. Long day? She asked, her voice steady, controlled. You know how it is, he said, loosening his tie. Work never slows down. Lisa nodded, her fingers tightening around the folder in her lap. Sit down, Mark. Something in her voice made him pause. A flicker of hesitation. He glanced at her hands, at the folder resting on the table. The ease in his expression faded just slightly. What's this? He asked, his tone still light, but his eyes sharper now. Lisa slid the folder across the table. Open it. Mark let out a nervous chuckle, as if this were all a misunderstanding, as if he could charm his way out of whatever he was about to see. But when he flipped open the first page, the laughter died. His face changed. The color drained from his skin as his eyes darted over the printed text messages, the financial statements, the photos of him holding hands with Rachel, lifting Emma into his arms. And then the last page, more photos, more records, another woman's name, another child. Lisa watched the realization settle in. He had no way out of this, his mouth open, closed. He looked at her, scrambling for words. Where did you get this? He finally asked, his voice tight. Lisa leaned forward, her hands flat against the table. I hired someone, she said. I wanted to know exactly how deep your lies went. Turns out, I didn't know the half of it. Mark's breathing quickened. It's not what you think. She slammed the folder shut. Don't, she cut him off. Don't insult me with another lie. Silence. Thick, suffocating. He swallowed hard. Lisa, I was going to tell you. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. When? After the next child? The next house? How many more families were you planning to collect? Mark ran a hand over his face, shaking his head. It's complicated. Lisa's jaw clenched. You stole from me, from our family. You took our money and used it to play house in places I never even knew existed. She exhaled, forcing herself to stay calm. Do you even understand what you've done? Mark opened his mouth to speak, but she wasn't interested in excuses. She pushed back her chair and stood, grabbing her keys. I'm leaving, she said, her voice quiet but firm. Mark shot up. Lisa, why? She turned, staring at the man she had once trusted with everything. You made your choice, she said. Now you're going to live with it. And with that, she walked out the door, leaving Mark standing in the wreckage of the life he had destroyed. Lisa didn't hesitate. She had wasted enough time believing in a man who had built a life on deception. Staying in that house, under the same roof as Mark, was no longer an option. She moved quickly, grabbing only what mattered. Her keys, her purse, a small overnight bag. Then, she went straight to the one person who needed her the most, her son. She arrived at his school earlier than usual, signing him out without offering much of an explanation. He looked up at her with curious eyes, sensing something was off. She forced a reassuring smile, brushing a hand through his hair. "We're going to stay somewhere else tonight," she told him gently. He nodded, accepting her words, but she could see the questions forming in his mind. Questions she wasn't ready to answer. Not yet. Lisa drove in silence, her fingers gripping the wheel, her thoughts racing faster than the cars passing by. She had spent the last 10 years believing her life was built on a foundation of love and trust. Now, she realized it had been crumbling beneath her feet for longer than she had known. She pulled into the driveway of her best friend's house. The moment the door opened, Lisa broke. Tears she had held back for hours, maybe even days, finally poured out. Her friend didn't ask questions, didn't press for details. She just pulled Lisa into a tight embrace, whispering, "You're safe now." And for the first time since that moment in the grocery store, Lisa believed it. But this wasn't over. The next morning, she sat across from a lawyer, laying out every piece of evidence she had gathered: the texts, the photos, the financial records. She wanted no loopholes, no chances for Mark to talk his way out of this. Her lawyer skimmed through the documents, nodding as he reached the last page. "This is solid," he said. "You have a strong case." Lisa exhaled, a flicker of relief cutting through the exhaustion. The divorce papers were drafted that same week. Mark fought, of course. He denied. He argued. He tried to play the victim. But Lisa had the truth on her side. And in the end, that was all she needed. Lisa's world had been shattered, but she refused to let the betrayal define her. What Mark had done had taken away her trust, her security, and the life she thought she knew, but it hadn't taken her. She rebuilt, piece by piece. Her focus became clear: her children, her future, her own strength. She refused to let Mark's choices dictate the rest of her life. The divorce was not just an ending, but a new beginning, a chance to step forward without the weight of his lies holding her back. There were difficult days, nights filled with questions, moments where the past threatened to pull her under. But each morning, she reminded herself, she had survived the worst of it, and she was still standing, and that was enough. Lisa's story is one of betrayal. Yes, but more importantly, it's a story of resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is a way forward. Have you ever faced a betrayal that changed your life? How did you find the strength to move on? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss a story that proves one simple truth: no matter what happens, you are stronger than you think.